The distress signal came as little more than a whisper in the void, short, erratic bursts of static over an outdated frequency, barely decipherable against the cosmic background noise. Captain David Mercer leaned forward in his command chair aboard the USS Resolute, eyes narrowing at the holographic display before him. "Confirm origin," he ordered. Lieutenant Elias Carter, the ship's communications officer, worked swiftly. "Signals weak. No known human encryption. Looks like an emergency beacon. Sir, alien, but not one we recognize." Mercer exhaled slowly. Alien distress signals were rare, and rarer still were those not originating from one of the galactic power players. Most species either avoided human space entirely or had the firepower to ensure they never had to ask for help. This was something different. "Helm, adjust course," Mercer commanded. "Bring us in slow, weapons cold, but keep the shields at full." A murmur of acknowledgement swept through the bridge. The crew of the Resolute were seasoned, disciplined. No one questioned the order, but tension coiled in the air like a drawn bowstring. Minutes stretched as they closed the distance. When the alien vessel finally came into view, Mercer's first thought was fragile. It was small, almost elegant, curved organic plating interwoven with delicate, pulsing filaments of bioluminescent blue. But the damage was severe. Hull breaches bled oxygen into the void, and its propulsion systems flickered weakly, barely sustaining life. "Getting biosigns," Carter reported. "Minimal, maybe a handful. They're not going to last long." Mercer made his decision. "Prepare a boarding team. I'll lead it myself. Hashtag first contact." The alien ship's airlock resisted, its failing system sluggish, but eventually gave way to human override. Mercer stepped inside, flanked by his executive officer, Commander Mark Halstead, and 2 armed Marines. The interior was dimly lit, walls lined with what appeared to be breathing membranes. A faint, almost musical hum filled the space, though it faltered in places where the ship's structure had been compromised. Then movement. A figure staggered into view, barely able to stand. Its frame was thin, wiry, encased in a flexible exoskeletal structure. Large, luminous eyes dominated a delicate, almost avian face. It clutched its side, translucent blood oozing between trembling fingers. Halstead raised his weapon instinctively, but Mercer held up a hand. "Easy," he said. Slowly, he knelt, palms open. "We're here to help." The alien struggled to focus, its breath ragged. Then, in halting, heavily accented standard, it spoke. "Humans." Mercer nodded. "That's right. You're safe now." The alien collapsed before it could say more. Mercer caught it, feeling the frailty beneath its plating. Whatever had attacked this vessel had not been interested in prisoners. "Get him to medical," Mercer ordered, "and tell engineering to stabilize this wreck before it comes apart around us." As his team moved, a new voice crackled over the comms. "Captain," Carter's voice was tight with urgency. "We've got incoming. Zuroff warship closing fast. Hashtag a dangerous arrival." Back aboard the Resolute, Mercer took his seat just as the view screen flared to life. The Zuroff vessel loomed ahead, angular and predatory, adorned with the red insignia of a Dominion. An incoming hail was already waiting. Mercer accepted it. The Zuroff commander appeared, tall, armored, his reptilian features contorted in irritation. Cold, predatory eyes locked onto Mercer. "You have interfered in Dominion affairs, human," the Zuroff hissed. "The creature aboard your ship is property of the Dominion. Surrender it, and we will allow you to leave unscathed." Mercer leaned back, expression unreadable. "That creature sent out a distress call. We responded." "A mistake," the Zuroff said flatly. "The Taloth are weak. Their kind has no place in this galaxy except under the rule of the Dominion. You have no reason to involve yourselves." Mercer kept his voice calm, but his crew knew the glint in his eyes. "We don't tolerate the mistreatment of allies. Consider this your only warning." The Zuroff commander sneered. Humans, so quick to claim honor, so blind to consequence. You will return our property, or... The transmission cut out as the Zuroth ship powered weapons. Shields up, Halstead barked. Evasive maneuvers. A pulse of crimson energy lanced across the void, narrowly missing the Resolute as the ship banked hard. The response was immediate. The Resolute's forward cannons fired, twin bursts of sapphire light streaking toward the enemy vessel. One shot struck true, shattering part of its outer hull plating. They weren't expecting us to shoot first, Halstead noted grimly. Mercer's voice was quiet but firm. Let's show them why that was a mistake. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag no second chances. The Zuroth warship pivoted, its turrets spinning up another barrage. But humans were faster. The Resolute weaved through incoming fire, countering with precision, not brute force. The enemy's shields flickered and buckled. Inside their ship, the Zuroth commander was quickly realizing his error. Humans were an enigma to the Dominion, a species dismissed as insignificant, yet infuriatingly competent when it came to war. Another well-placed railgun round punctured the Zuroth's weapons array. The alien vessel faltered. Smoke and atmosphere vented from multiple breaches. Their return fire became sporadic, desperate. Mercer hailed them. The Zuroth commander's face reappeared, this time with an edge of fear behind defiance. Your ship is dead in the water, Mercer said. Withdraw. Now. A long, tense pause. Then the Zuroth bared his fangs. You have made an enemy of the Dominion this day, human. Maybe, Mercer said evenly, but let me be absolutely clear. Do not harm our alien allies. The Zuroth ship powered down its remaining systems. A reluctant retreat. As it disappeared into the void, Halstead let out a slow breath. They'll be back. Mercer nodded, gaze fixed on the empty stars ahead. Then they'll learn the hard way, he said. We say it once. The Zuroth did not retreat for long. 2 weeks after their encounter near the wreckage of the Tala vessel, the U.S. Resolute floated in high orbit above Outpost Kilo 29, one of humanity's deep space listening stations on the border of neutral space. The mission was simple: deliver the rescued Tala survivors to safety and assess whether the Zuroth would honor their silent retreat. They received their answer when Outpost Kilo 29 stopped responding. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag the silent outpost. Still nothing? Captain David Mercer asked. Pacing the bridge as the Resolute approached the darkened station, Lieutenant Elias Carter shook his head. All comms are down. The station's power signature is erratic. Life support is running, but their defensive grid is offline. That's not a technical failure, Commander Mark Halstead muttered. That's sabotage. Mercer clenched his jaw. Kilo 29 was a small installation, more a research station than a military stronghold. It had barely 24 personnel aboard, scientists, engineers, and a handful of security officers. If the Zuroth had attacked, the outpost wouldn't have stood a chance. Bring us within shuttle range, Mercer ordered. I want a boarding team prepped in 10. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag the horror within. The moment Mercer stepped into the station's airlock, he knew they were too late. The air smelled wrong, a mix of scorched metal and something more primal, something that reminded him of slaughterhouses back on Earth. The lights flickered, casting jagged shadows across the bulkheads. As they moved deeper into the corridors, they found the first bodies. A security officer slumped against the wall, his rifle still clutched in rigid fingers. Deep, cauterized gashes marked his chest, Zuroth plasma blades. Further down, an engineer lay sprawled across a console, throat slit with something far too precise to be a blade. A message had been burned into the bulkhead behind him. This is what happens to those who shelter the weak. Halstead exhaled sharply. This wasn't an invasion. This was a statement. Mercer stepped forward, jaw tight. The Zuroth hadn't taken the station. They had slaughtered its people and left their work intact. An intentional violation meant to provoke. They wanted the humans to know that no one, ***, not the Talith, not anyone ***, could seek protection without consequence. The crew stood in silence until the sound of movement broke the stillness. "Contact!" One of the Marines barked, raising his rifle. From the dark, a human figure stumbled forward, half collapsing into Mercer's arms. It was Dr. Felix Brandt, the station's chief scientist. His face was streaked with blood, his uniform torn, but his eyes were alert with fear. "They left me alive," Brandt rasped, gripping Mercer's uniform with desperate strength. "They wanted a witness. They wanted someone to tell you what they said." Mercer steadied him. "What did they say?" Brandt swallowed hard, voice hollow. "They said, you were warned. Hashtag, 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 the line is drawn." Back aboard the Resolute, Mercer stood in the war room, reviewing every detail of the attack with his officers. The grim images of the massacre filled the holographic display, but Mercer's focus was set on the final moments of the outpost distress log. The Zurov leader who had orchestrated the attack appeared on the screen. His scaled face bore the cruel smirk of a predator toying with its prey. "This was avoidable," the Zurov commander sneered. "You could have walked away, but you chose to defend the weak. So now you will learn what it means to cross the Dominion." The recording ended. Silence hung heavy in the room. "They think we'll back down," Halstead said. Carter scoffed. "They think wrong." Mercer turned to the room, his expression unreadable. "We sent them a warning. They ignored it." He looked toward his officers, his voice steady, but edged with steel. "They won't get another one. Hashtag, 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 the Zurov strike again." The retaliation came swifter than expected. As the Resolute prepared to depart Kilo. 29. Carter's console flared red. "Captain, multiple Zurov warships just dropped out of FDL. 3 heavy cruisers and a battle carrier. They're not just posturing this time," Halstead muttered. "They came ready for war." Mercer turned to the weapons officer. "Battle stations. Shields at full. Target the lead ship." The Zurov fleet wasted no time. Bright lances of plasma fire streaked across the void, hammering the Resolute shields. The ship rocked violently, but the human warship held firm. "Return fire," Mercer commanded. The Resolute's forward railguns thundered, rounds slamming into the nearest cruiser. The first shot tore through its hull plating, sending a ripple of secondary explosions across its surface. But the Zurov were learning. They adjusted, shifting their formation to spread out the impact. "They're adapting," Carter warned. "So do we," Mercer said. "Shift firing pattern. Target their maneuvering thrusters." The next barrage struck with surgical precision, disabling the lead cruiser's ability to dodge. The Resolute pivoted hard, sweeping underneath the enemy formation and unloading a full broadside into the battle carrier's command section. The Zurov fleet faltered. This was not the easy fight they had expected. Hashtag, 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 a message delivered. The battle lasted less than 15 minutes. When the final Zurov ship limped away, its engines barely holding together, Mercer allowed the bridge a moment of stillness before speaking. "Status." Halstead exhaled. "Shields at 30%, minimal hull damage." "We held." Carter frowned at his console. "Incoming transmission from the Zurov flagship, sir." Mercer nodded. "Put it through." The Zurov commander reappeared on screen. His arrogance was gone, replaced by something sharper. Asterisk, asterisk, anger, and the first glimmer of doubt, asterisk, asterisk. "You fight well, human," the commander admitted, "but your defiance will cost you. We do not stop. We do not forget." Mercer stepped forward, his voice unwavering. "You came into our space. You slaughtered our people. You thought we would cower." He leaned in, the cold resolve in his tone unmistakable. "You were warned. Stand down now, or you will not get another chance." The Zurov's lip curled, but he said nothing. The transmission cut out. Seconds later, the remaining Zurov ships vanished into FDL, retreating into the abyss. Hashtag, 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 the next move. The bridge remained quiet, tension lingering in the air. Carter was the first to break the silence. "They're not done, are they?" "No," Mercer said. "They're just getting started." Halstead exhaled sharply. "So are we." Mercer looked out at the stars, jaw set. "The next time they come," he said, We won't just hold the line. We'll end this. The Zurath did not take their defeat as a lesson. They took it as a challenge. 3 weeks had passed since the skirmish at Outpost Kilo 29. The USS Resolute had returned to patrol along the Talib border, knowing the Dominion was plotting its next move. Captain David Mercer had expected retaliation. He had expected escalation. What he had not expected was outright butchery. Hashtag the convoy massacre. The distress call came from the Horizon Dawn, a civilian transport carrying Talib refugees under human escort. It never completed its journey. By the time the Resolute arrived at the designated checkpoint, the battlefield had already gone cold. The wreckage of the Horizon Dawn and its escort ships, 3 corvettes of the United Human Nations Navy, floated in the void, torn apart with methodical cruelty. Mercer stood on the bridge, staring at the devastation. "Survivors?" he asked, though he already suspected the answer. Lieutenant Elias Carter's voice was tight. "None." The Zurath hadn't just attacked a military installation this time. They hadn't sent a warning, or even a demand. They had hunted down defenseless civilians, human and Talib alike, and wiped them out. Commander Mark Halstead stood stiff beside Mercer, his fists clenched. This was intentional. Mercer nodded. "They want us angry." They succeeded. A sharp beep interrupted them. Carter's console flared to life with an incoming transmission. It was a wide-frequency broadcast. Asterisk, asterisk, meant to be heard asterisk, asterisk. The holographic display flickered, and the familiar face of the Zurath commander from Outpost Kilo 29 appeared. His reptilian features stretched into a mocking grin. "You humans have a peculiar arrogance," the Zurath said, his voice thick with contempt. "You think your words mean something, that your threats carry weight. We warned you to stand aside. You refused, and now," his grin widened, "this is your fault." The transmission cut. Silence followed. Mercer's voice was barely above a whisper. "Weapons officer." "Aye, Captain?" "Mark the coordinates of the closest Zurath fleet base." His voice hardened. "We are ending this. Hashtag. No more warnings." The Resolute wasn't alone when it launched its counterstrike. When news of the massacre spread, the United Human Nations Navy responded with grim efficiency. A fleet was assembled. 3 battle cruisers, 2 carriers, and a dozen supporting vessels. Their target, Outpost Veltrack, the largest Zurath stronghold in the region. The plan was not to negotiate. Mercer stood in the fleet's command briefing, his gaze sweeping across the assembled officers. "No more warnings," he said. "No more mercy. They wanted to see what happens when humanity fights without restraint. We're going to show them." No one objected. Hashtag, the storm breaks. The human fleet arrived at Veltrack in the dead silence of space. The Zurath were waiting. 5 battle carriers, nearly double that in cruisers. They believed in brute force, in overwhelming their enemies through sheer firepower. But humans had brought something else. Precision, tactics, vengeance, asterisk. The battle began with a coordinated cyber assault. Within seconds, human infiltration teams breached Zurath communications, flooding their systems with false orders. Ships scrambled to react, hesitating when they should have fired, repositioning at the worst possible moments. That was all the opening the fleet needed. The Resolute led the charge. Railguns flared, unleashing hypervelocity rounds that punched through Zurath hulls like paper. Missile strikes followed, targeting weapon arrays before the enemy could mount an effective counterattack. The Zurath tried to fight back. Plasma batteries ignited the void, but human ships danced through the chaos, their maneuvers calculated to the millisecond. What should have been a prolonged engagement became a rout. One after another, Zurath ships fell, their shields buckling, their formations collapsing under relentless pressure. The once proud battle carriers burned, gutted from the inside by precision strikes. The Resolute punched through, to the heart of the station itself. Hashtag Mercer's final offer. With Veltrak's defenses in ruins, Mercer hailed the surviving Zeroth commanders. The screen flickered, revealing the same Zeroth warlord who had ordered the massacre. He looked different now. Gone was the arrogance, the sneer. In its place, *** shock, and the creeping edge of fear ***. Mercer didn't waste words. Your forces are decimated. Your defenses are gone. Surrender. The Zeroth's jaw tightened. You think you have won? Mercer's voice was ice cold. No, I think we haven't gone far enough yet. The warlord hesitated. The Zeroth never surrendered. It wasn't their way. But this was different. This was annihilation. Still, pride remained. If we yield, what becomes of us? Mercer's stare was unyielding. If you withdraw from Tala space and never set foot here again, you live. The warlord inhaled sharply. And if we refuse? Mercer didn't blink. Then we erase every trace of your empire from the stars. A long silence. The Zeroth exhaled, a slow, bitter sound. We will withdraw. The words were spoken like swallowing poison. Mercer gave a slight nod. Then you'll live to regret ever underestimating humanity. The transmission ended. The war was over. Hashtag the aftermath. The battle had been won, but there was no celebration. There was only silence as the human fleet surveyed the wreckage. They had avenged the dead, but they had not brought them back. Halstead approached Mercer as the Resolute prepared to leave. What do you think they'll do now? He asked. Mercer's gaze remained fixed on the shattered remains of Veltrak. They'll never test us again, he said, because they finally understand. Carter, standing nearby, frowned. Understand what? Mercer turned to face him. His voice as steady as it had been on that first day. We say it once. The Zeroth had withdrawn, but the war was not truly over. The Udat Estes Resolute drifted through the aftermath of battle, surrounded by the floating remains of what had once been Outpost Veltrak, the Zeroth's mightiest fortress in the region. Now, it was little more than a shattered husk. Wreckage littered the void, and the embers of dying warships cast flickering light against the cold darkness. The human fleet had won. But Captain David Mercer knew victories like these never lasted forever. Hashtag a message from the dead. Captain, Lieutenant Elias Carter called from a station, his voice tight. We're picking up an automated transmission from the station's core systems. Looks like it was triggered as soon as their command structure collapsed. Mercer turned toward the main view screen. Put it through. The static-laced image of a Zeroth warlord filled the screen. ***, but not the one Mercer had spoken hours ago, ***. This recording had been made long before the battle. The alien scale face was marked with ceremonial scars, his eyes alight with cold certainty. If you are hearing this, the Zeroth said, his voice unwavering, then it means our stronghold has fallen, and you have struck a blow against the Dominion. But you do not understand what you have done. The warlord leaned forward. We are not like you. We do not fight for land or for pride. We fight because it is what we are. And when we are defeated, we do not forgive. We do not retreat. A pause. Then, with chilling certainty, ***, we multiply. The message ended. The bridge remained silent. They're not finished, Commander Mark Halstead muttered. Not by a long shot. Carter exhaled sharply. Sir, if they were planning a second wave. They already have, Mercer interrupted. His gaze remained fixed on the dark void beyond. The only question is where. Hashtag a trap already set. The answer came sooner than expected. A high-priority distress beacon flared across their comms. ***, a direct transmission from Tala space, ***. The Resolute sensors picked up the impossible. Zeroth ships had appeared deep within the Talath home system itself, bypassing all human patrols and fortifications. The enemy had been 2 steps ahead the entire time. Carter's voice was grim. They didn't fall back to regroup. They lured us here while they struck at the heart of the Tallith. Mercer wasted no time. Set course for Tala Prime. Maximum speed. The Resolute surged forward, its engines burning hot as the fleet raced against time. Hashtag the final confrontation. When the human fleet dropped out of FTL over Tala Prime, they arrived to chaos. A full Zeroth assault force had descended upon the planet's largest colony, reducing entire districts to molten slag. The Tallith, never warriors by nature, had no way to fight back. But the moment the Resolute and its fleet entered the battle, the tides turned. Railguns roared. Missiles streaked through the dark. Human warships plunged into fray with deadly efficiency, cutting apart the Zeroth formations before they could react. But the enemy was prepared. As the fleet carved its way toward the planet's orbit, an alert flared across Mercer's screen. Multiple FDL signatures. "Captain," Carter shouted, "we've got incoming." 3. No, for more Zeroth battle carriers just dropped out of warp. Halstead swore under his breath. They knew we'd chase them here. They laid the perfect trap. Mercer clenched his fists. The Zeroth had been baiting them all along, forcing humanity into a desperate defense, stretching them thin. And now, the real battle had begun. He exhaled slowly. They wanted a last stand? Fine. Hashtag the cause of defiance. The space around Tallith Prime erupted into an inferno. The battle raged on, the void itself trembling under the sheer fury of human and Zeroth firepower. Ship after ship fell, tore apart by relentless barges. The Zeroth had numbers, but the humans had precision, tactics, unbreakable will, asterisk. The Resolute fought at the heart of the storm, its weapons carving through enemy formations like a scalpel. But even as the Zeroth fleet suffered heavy losses, they refused a break. "They're not retreating," Halstead noted, brow furrowed. "They're throwing everything into this." Mercer's eyes darkened, because they don't plan to leave. He understood now. This wasn't a battle to win. It was a battle to make humanity bleed. Hashtag the line in the stars. Mercer made his decision. He opened a direct channel to the entire Zeroth fleet. His face, scarred by battle but unbroken, filled their view screens. His voice was cold steel. "This is Captain Mercer of a United Human Nations Navy," he began. "You have one chance. Leave now and you live. Stay and you die." For the first time, there was hesitation. The Zeroth had believed humans were predictable, that they would fight until exhausted, that their morality would hold them back. But now, they saw something else in Mercer's eyes. No hesitation, no doubt, just certainty. "This is our final warning," Mercer continued. "And you know what happens when humans give a final warning." For a long moment, the void held its breath. Then, one by one, the Zeroth ships began to withdraw. Hashtag the war ends. It was over. The Zeroth had finally learned what no threat, no battle, no massacre had taught them before. Humans did not fight for conquest. They did not fight for sport. They fought for those they called their own. And they did not warn twice. As the last Zeroth vessel disappeared into the abyss, Mercer stood on the bridge of the Resolute, gazing at the stars beyond. The war had cost him dearly. But now, the Zeroth knew the price of underestimating humanity. Halstead stepped beside him, his expression weary, but resolute. "Think they'll ever try this again?" Mercer exhaled, watching as the battle-scarred remains of the Zeroth fleet faded into the void. "No," he said at last. "Not if they want to live."